The cupcake was from a grocery store. Lara could tell by the frosting, that particular chemical sweetness that came in a tub, spread with a knife rather than piped, the kind that left a film on the roof of your mouth. The candle was unlit. No one had lit it. It sat on the marble island in a cupcake liner, and beside it, sliding across the surface on the friction of her father's palm, was a check for $800,000 made out to her name. Her grandfather's handwriting, his birthday gift. He had mailed it to this address because she had not yet told him she no longer came here voluntarily. "You understand the situation," her mother said. She was not asking. Her father's phone was on the table, screen up, showing a photograph of the front driveway. A black car was parked at the curb. It had been there when Lara arrived, and she had taken her own photograph of it before she came inside, because she took photographs of things now. She took photographs of everything. "The men Marcus owes are not patient people," Catherine said. "We need the transfer completed tonight." Leonard had locked the front door when she came in. She had heard the deadbolt. She had not reacted, because she had known it was coming, and she had spent 3 years practicing not reacting to things she had already anticipated. She looked at the cupcake. She looked at the check. She picked up the pen her father had set beside it, and she turned it over once in her fingers, and she made the decision she had been building toward since she was 26 years old and sitting in a county records office with a forensic certification, 3 months old, and 11 years of her family's financial history spread across her screen. "Signing this directly will trigger an automatic SAR filing," she said. Her father blinked. "A what?" "Suspicious activity report. The Bank Secrecy Act requires any transaction over $10,000 to be reported, and any transfer pattern that appears to be structuring, breaking a large sum into smaller movements to avoid reporting, triggers an automatic flag. A transfer of this size, from a gift check to a third-party account, within 24 hours of receipt, flagged by the recipient, will freeze the account pending review before the funds clear." She set the pen down. "Your brother's creditors will be waiting 3 to 6 months." The silence in the dining room was the particular silence of 2 people recalculating. Catherine's expression did not change. Her mother's expressions were always a half-second behind her thoughts, a tell Lara had identified when she was 12 and used ever since as her primary instrument for reading a room. The calculation was running. Lara watched it finish. "What are you proposing?" Catherine said. It was not quite a question. "Asset protection structure, corporate acquisition framing. The transfer moves through a holding entity, clean, judgment-proof, gift tax efficient. The funds clear in 48 hours and no SAR is triggered because the structure is a legitimate business transfer rather than a personal transaction." She looked at her father. "You've been wanting to position the house for estate planning purposes for 2 years. This addresses both problems simultaneously." Leonard looked at his wife. Lara watched the thing happen that she had calculated would happen, the pivot from his son's debt to the house. Leonard Parker had loved his son in the way of a man who confused protection with money and money with love. But Leonard Parker had loved this house in a different and more reliable way, the way of a man whose identity was denominated in marble floors and custom millwork, and a chandelier that had cost more than Lara's first year of college. He was not thinking about Marcus anymore. He was thinking about keeping the house from being attached. "Walk us through it," Catherine said. The house had been renovated in the 2 years after Lara's settlement arrived. She had traced the transfers herself when she got her certification, using the same methodology she applied at work. Start with the anomaly, build the timeline backward, let the numbers tell the story the people won't. The Italian marble in this dining room had been ordered 11 months after her parents told her the market had crashed and her investment account was gone. The custom millwork in the hallway cost $47,000 and had been invoiced to a contractor her father used and paid in full during the same quarter that her sophomore year financial aid gap appeared in her college records. The chandelier overhead cost $9,000 and had been hung the summer she was working double shifts at a hospital billing office and living in a basement apartment where the wall behind the bathroom sink had gone black by October. She had the receipts. She had the bank records. She had the transfer documentation from her mother's account to the contractor's account and from the contractor's account to the vendor. She had the college fund statements showing the depletion timeline. She had the personal injury settlement records, the disbursement authorization bearing her mother's signature as her legal guardian at the time, and the criminal defense attorney's fee schedule from her brother's case, paid in full 2 months after the settlement landed. She had done the math on the principal and the interest at a conservative rate over 11 years. The house settled it almost exactly. She explained the structure in the register she used for client presentations. Unhurried, precise, just fast enough that they would nod rather than interrupt. Veritas Holdings, LLC, registered in Delaware 3 months ago. Asset transfer through quit-claim deed, which was a standard instrument for transferring real property interest without a warranty of title, clean, simple, recorded with the county. The corporate framing insulated the asset from Marcus's creditors, who could not attach a corporate asset to satisfy a personal judgment against a family member. Leonard's interest as a shareholder of record would be noted in the operating agreement. Catherine's role as managing member would be designated. "You control the entity," she said. "The house transfers into the entity. The entity is judgment-proof against Marcus's debt. The creditors have no path to the asset." She watched Leonard nod at the term judgment-proof. The way people nodded at technical language, they had decided to trust. When Leonard asked whether the trust returns the house to them once the debt is settled, he did ask that precisely in those words, and she had her answer ready. "The contract follows the money," she said. It was true, completely true. The money they owed her was the debt. The balance was the house. The contract, the operating agreement she had drafted 3 months ago, the quit-claim deed she had prepared last week. The corporate structure she had registered in Delaware and domesticated in their state of residence followed the money with perfect fidelity. She was not lying. She was speaking in a dialect they did not have the vocabulary to read. Her father left the room to get his laptop. She sat alone with her mother. The chandelier light was warm and specific. $9,000. She had looked up the manufacturer. It was a Venetian glass piece, custom-ordered, 8 months lead time. Her mother had selected it during a period when Lara's college fund records showed a withdrawal pattern that coincided with Marcus's gambling debts, documented through the payment processor records she had subpoenaed via the civil litigation she had filed, and then held in abeyance for 6 months, waiting. Catherine poured herself more wine. Lara's glass was untouched. "I want you to understand something," Catherine said. She was using the voice she had always used for this, measured, almost gentle, the voice of a woman who believed herself to be the most reasonable person in any room she occupied. "Your brother is not well. He never has been. We have been managing that reality for a long time, longer than you know." Lara looked at the marble floor. "I know," she said. It was true. She did know. "This family has sacrificed things you don't see and haven't seen. Your father has sacrificed his retirement. I have sacrificed." Catherine paused in the way of someone constructing a list. "A great deal. This is what families do. This is what love requires sometimes." Lara looked at her mother. Catherine's eyes were steady. She believed this. That was the part Lara had understood slowly and then all at once. Her mother was not a woman performing virtue. She was a woman who had rewritten the accounting so thoroughly that she genuinely could not see the original numbers anymore. Lara was not a victim of malice. She was a victim of arithmetic performed by someone who had decided which figures to include. Leonard's footsteps in the hallway. Catherine reached across the table and closed her hand around Lara's wrist. Her grip was stronger than it should have been for a woman her age, and Lara had the brief thought that her mother had always been stronger than she looked. "If you make a problem tonight," Catherine said, "we will file for emergency conservatorship. Your federal clearance will be flagged pending the psychiatric evaluation. Your license will be placed under review while the process runs. I have spoken to an attorney. I know what the filing looks like." Her voice had not changed register at all. "You have spent 3 years building something. We will take it apart in 3 weeks. Do you understand me?" Lara understood. She felt something that had been residual and persistent, a grain of something she could not have named precisely, but that had to do with the woman in the hospital room who had held her hand and promised safekeeping, turned to something else entirely. Not anger. Something more final than anger. She smiled, not warmly. "I understand," she said. Leonard came back with the laptop. She set up the notary call at 9:47. The notary was a woman in a blazer in what appeared to be a home office. She introduced herself as Shara and confirmed her commission number. She was professional and entirely incurious about the transaction she had been hired to witness. Lara had engaged her through a remote notarization platform 3 weeks ago and had confirmed the appointment that morning. "I need to flag a timing issue," Lara said, not to the notary, to her parents. "The merger code window on the Delaware domestication closes at midnight. If the deed transfer doesn't record tonight, the structure collapses and we file the domestication separately, which triggers a different reporting requirement." She pulled up the operating agreement on her laptop and turned it to face them. "This is the Veritas Holdings operating agreement. Your names are here: Leonard Parker, managing shareholder; Catherine Parker, managing member. The quitclaim deed transfers the property into corporate ownership. The structure is complete when the notary stamps. The house is protected." Her mother was reading. Leonard was reading. They were reading the parts that had their names on them and not the parts that specified the ownership interest structure of Veritas Holdings, LLC, which was 100% held by its registered agent, which was a law firm in Wilmington, Delaware, which held those interests on behalf of its client, which was Lara. She had written the operating agreement herself, reviewed by a property attorney she trusted, and it was correct in every technical particular. Leonard signed. Catherine signed. The quitclaim deed went next. She walked them through it. Grantor conveys and warrants to Veritas Holdings, LLC, a Delaware limited liability company, the following described real property, and the legal description of the address, the parcel number, the county recording information. Standard instrument. Completely standard. Leonard signed. Catherine signed. The notary confirmed identity, witnessed the signatures, and applied her digital seal. The screen showed a green stamp. "The house is protected," Leonard said. He said it like a man exhaling something he had been holding. Lara closed the laptop. Her mother extended her hand for the check. Lara picked it up from the table. She carried it to the shredder her father kept in the alcove between the dining room and the hallway, a heavy-duty crosscut model, the kind used for financial documents, which she had always thought was a telling choice for a man who had never once questioned where the money came from. She fed the check through. The machine ran for 4 seconds. The silence after it stopped was total. Leonard moved toward her. She raised her phone. "Live," she said, "streaming to a private server. Hi, Dad." He stopped. She had not planned to stream. She had planned to record. But live streaming required him to know it, and knowing it was what stopped him, so she had chosen the word that would work, and she had been right. Catherine said, "What have you done?" It was not a question either. "Veritas," Lara said. "It's from Latin, veritas, truth. I registered it 3 months ago." She picked up her bag from the chair. "The operating agreement designates me as the sole beneficial owner through the registered agent structure. The quitclaim deed transferred the title tonight, witnessed and stamped. You signed both. The notary confirmed. It recorded to the county assessor's digital system at," she checked her phone, 9:53. The chandelier light was very warm. "The forensic audit covers 11 years, she said. "My personal injury settlement, the disbursement records, the contractor payments that correspond to the renovation timeline, the college fund depletion records, and the gambling debt payments for Marcus that map to the same withdrawal periods. The principal with interest at a conservative rate equals approximately the assessed value of this property. I have calculated it twice. The IRS referral and the DA's office will receive the file if I don't have a signed acknowledgement of the debt by Friday." She paused. "The eviction notice is already drafted. I'll file Monday if I don't have a vacate date." She looked at her mother. Catherine was very still. The calculating expression she had seen all night was gone, and what was underneath it was something Lara had not seen before. Not grief, not rage. The expression of a woman who had not imagined this room. "You can contest the transfer," Lara said. "You'll need to demonstrate that the signatures were obtained by fraud, which will require you to characterize the operating agreement as deceptive. Your attorney will note that the document accurately describes the ownership structure and that you had the opportunity to read it. You can also argue coercion, which will open the conversation about what was said at this table tonight and what I have on the stream." She picked up the cupcake from the island and set it in the trash under the counter, gently. "Or you can be out by noon on Monday." She left through the front door, which she unlocked from the inside herself. At 2:14 in the morning, her phone showed motion at her old apartment address. She was on the interstate, driving back toward the city, the heat running high and the roads empty. She opened the alert. The camera she had installed in the ventilation panel of her old unit, installed 2 weeks ago, after she told Marcus that she kept emergency cash in the shaft behind the grill, showed her brother in the glow of a flashlight, a tire iron in his hand, working at the grill's screws with the focused industry of a man who believed he was minutes from money. She had given him the address at 7 o'clock this evening, in a text she had composed carefully. She had told him she kept $10,000 in cash there for emergencies and that she wouldn't miss it tonight, given everything. She had used the phrase "given everything" because Marcus responded to the suggestion of guilt the way her father responded to the suggestion of protection. It narrowed his vision to a single point. She opened the app and sent him a message through the building's tenant system, which she was still paying for through the end of the month. "Smile, you're on the cloud." The responding officers arrived 7 minutes later, according to the timestamp. She drove. 30 days later, in a different room entirely, her grandfather's hand was steady as he slid the check across the desk. William Parker was 81. He had made money in ways that were comprehensible and kept it in ways that were straightforward, and he had watched his son raise a family in ways he did not discuss directly, but had noted with the accuracy of a man who had been observing people for a very long time. He had mailed the birthday check to the family address because Lara had not yet told him she no longer went there. And when the check did not clear and the story reached him through channels he did not disclose, he had called her directly and asked her to come to the office. He had listened for a long time. The new check was for $800,000. In the memo line he had written, "For your firm." "Your mother will contest the transfer," he said. "I know." "She won't win." "I know," she said again. He looked at her for a moment. He was a man who had always looked at her directly, which was not something she had registered as unusual until she understood what the alternative looked like. "Your grandmother would have done the same thing," he said. "More quickly, probably." Lara looked at the check. Her grandmother had built the trust that funded her settlement and had designated Lara as its beneficiary before she was old enough to understand what that meant. She had died when Lara was 24, and Lara had cried at the funeral in the specific way of someone who has lost the only reliable witness to their own life. "I'm naming the firm after her," Lara said. He nodded. He did not say anything else. He was a man who understood when a conversation had completed. She picked up the check. Her hand was steady. Outside the window, the city was going about its ordinary morning. Traffic, pedestrians, the particular indifferent motion of a world that would not record what had happened in this room. She would record it herself, in a file she would label with today's date, the first entry in a new structure built from scratch. She had always been better at building things than waiting for them.